Welcome to the Qualitalks podcast, a show about pharma and GMP. The pharmaceutical industry is a fascinating and complex field, and it takes countless people to bring a product to the market. In this podcast, we bring you some of the industry's brightest minds who will share their wisdom with you. And now, please welcome your host, Jan Kugel.
Welcome to the Qualitalks podcast, the show for pharma quality professionals who want to sharpen their skills and lead with impact. I'm Jan Kugel, the Managing Director at Qualistry and your host for this show. So, did you know that nearly every breakthrough in advanced therapies hinges on quality leadership that can balance innovation with strict compliance? Today, we have a guest who lives the challenge every day. Melanie Kearney has extensive experience across the biotech, radiopharmaceutical, and pharmaceutical sectors. She has led quality teams in both startups and complex multi-site operations. Melanie is currently the Senior Vice President and Head of Global Quality at OXB. For those unfamiliar, OXB stands at the forefront of cell and gene therapy innovation, supporting its clients to deliver life-changing therapies to patients around the world. With 30 years of experience, OXB is a recognized global leader in the development and manufacture of viral vectors, a key component in cell and gene therapies that target a wide range of diseases, from rare genetic disorders to cancer. And in this episode, we will explore Melanie's unique journey to global quality leadership, learn how she drives quality culture across multiple sites, and how she connects quality metrics to business value insights every quality professionals can learn from, and how she does it in this field of viral vectors. So let's dive in. Melanie, welcome to the Qualitalks podcast. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
I'm very happy talking to you because of your vast experience and your experience spans across multiple sectors in the pharmaceutical and GXP. And I wanted to jump in and learn how it shaped your approach to quality, to going through all those changes and the different types of industry in the GXP. How does it impact your insights into quality and quality management?
Well, I think the interesting thing for me is that I didn't start out always in quality. I started out working in R&D, which gave me a unique insight into how quality works within the R&D setting. I've also worked in different areas in the sites, for example, in technical services, a little bit in plant, in the QC lab, in analytical development. So really, I have worked across a lot of different elements, which now, that I'm in quality, I'm able to see how we can really bring some concrete input into each of those areas. So I'm very happy that I started out not in quality. And also it's important to understand really where the problems, if there are problems, lie. In the end, we all live in the real world. Manufacturing is a complex business, and we will encounter challenges and issues. And it's important to really be able to concretely understand where those problems are as a quality professional.
And how was your transition from R&D? It feels for me such different worlds. The R&D, they're focused on the research, the results. They want to make change happen, and they're happy to do it probably quickly because you're so excited about the developments that you do. And then you have the quality that says, stop. Wait a moment, let's see whether it fits the regulations here, whether it is validatable and such and such. So how was the transition? Probably it was not that easy to do it.
Yeah, so I mean, in my case, I was working in R&D and analytical development for a long time, working in automation, for example, also. And then I moved across to work in a technical services role where I was really managing the incoming products into both the QC lab and also into the plant. So I had a step, I would say, away from R&D and into a sort of in between role, I would say. So really the link between commercial, manufacture and development. One thing that I learned there is how very important it is to have a really good connection with R&D, with development in general, and with commercial. That link between the two is key, because if we make things that are difficult to manufacture on a commercial scale, then that poses problems right from the beginning. So one of the things I'm quite passionate about is always making sure that we have that really great connection between development and commercial.
So Melanie, thanks for this answer. So I think that coming from R&D really helps you connect with the people from the quality perspective, because I think there are quite a few people who start working in quality without going and working in different departments within the quality, within the manufacturing, and it can bring conflicts if you just dive into the quality itself, and still there is such a difference between academia R&D and the R&D that you have in organizations.
So I think that there's ways to go faster and to do things in a different way within research and development and within development in general. What I think is important, though, is that we have a standard which we must adhere to. And maybe one example of that is, when I'm putting in place an electronic quality management system, if I have development sites, I'm very keen always for them to have exactly the same system. So exactly the same basic QMS, so that, they are working to a standard. The way that we are training people and documenting that, for example, is very clear and is really connected with the rest of the organization. But it's important that we have ways to go faster in some elements. But I'm very keen that if we have, that good connection between commercial manufacture, then, the very last part of development must always be in such a way that, when those methods or manufacture is transferred across into commercial, that it's really something that we can put in place and we can easily run and we can easily manufacture. So that connection, once again, is really, really important between the two groups.
I have a question about your transition to the 2XB and the viral vectors field. So you started, and your career path took you through various sectors in the pharmaceuticals, right? So you had the radiopharmaceuticals, for example. Then you come to biologics, right? To viral vectors. So I believe you didn't work before in this sector, and then you come here as Senior Global Quality and Regulatory SVP. And how do you bring your knowledge that you had before to this environment? What challenges do you encounter and that you need to tackle now in this new environment for you?
So my principle around quality is that whichever part of the industry that I've worked in, the principles are the same. So, I've worked in biologics in the past, but I've also worked across a range of different types of parts of the industry. So as you mentioned before, working in radiopharmaceuticals, in pharmaceuticals, I've worked in consumer health, in biologics. So one of the things is I always like to learn something. When I'm making a change, it's always great to learn something new about a different kind of product. But for me, the viral vector space was very interesting. I was really delighted to join OXB. It's a fantastic company doing incredible things, really bringing life-saving products really to our clients, who can then provide them to our patients. So really an incredibly motivating type of product. How do you make that change? For me to go from different things, I like to learn, and the principles of quality are the same. So, it's interesting that you can learn a lot, I believe, about the way to manage quality by working in different types of industries. within the pharmaceutical scope. So an example of that could be, when I worked in the radio pharma business, we were doing very fast ways to manage deviations, for example. So, if you manufacture something at 5 o'clock in the morning and it's due in a patient at 10 o'clock, if you have deviations, you really need to understand and get to the root cause of those deviations and understand whether, there's something that can be closed out and dealt with, and the compliance is maintained and patient safety is maintained or not. And so that was, an example of something that I brought from radio pharma into other industries, such as into consumer health, for example, and even now coming into OXB and the viral vector space. The way that we manage exceptions is the same, but we can do things in smarter ways, in more efficient ways, and it's interesting for me to learn from different parts of the industry. So coming to OXB, yes, again, a wonderful company. I would say that viral vectors have their own challenges. In the end of the day, it really is a biological starting material. It has really unique ways to be manufactured. The regulatory landscape is changing a lot all the time, and we need to be agile, and we need to be able to react to that, and we need to have a solid quality system that can take all that into account. So the change from different areas and different types of products for me is not an issue. It's really a way to learn from how other parts of the industry do things, and to bring that together and to make that work in whatever it is I'm moving into.
When you joined OXB as SVP of quality, and you're responsible for multiple sites, so what are your priorities there as somebody who's stepping into those big shoes?
Yeah, so we have quite a number of sites. We just purchased a site quite recently, back in October. So I think the important thing is to make connections with people. I'm really passionate about the teams that we work with and the people that we work with, and how we make those connections right from the beginning is extremely important. So for me, if you have a reasonable number of sites, the first thing to do is make sure that you get out there and you go and you meet people and you really speak to people who are actually creating quality, because what I'm doing in an office in one part of the world is really not. I'm not the person who's making quality, right? That's the people who are really in our manufacturing sites. So and to understand also if you have some hotspots, if you have some areas which need attention, and then maybe to make a prioritization around that if there's things to be done. One of the important parts of OXB is that we do believe in a really global environment. So we really believe that the quality of work that comes out of one site, for example, in the US, should be absolutely the same as something coming out of the UK. The way that we communicate with our clients, the standard of work that we do, the standard of quality is the same. So that globalization is really key. So for me, it's a lot about the people. I love working with different cultures. I've done that a lot. In my previous role, I was working with about 50 countries. So it's really a big group of people with lots of different cultural aspects. But I think that if we can capture that, we can use the diversity that we have, the strength of all of those people. Everyone has different strengths and different things that they can bring to a company. So really to make those connections, to understand people's challenges, understand people's successes also, and make sure that you have your feet on the ground and you are going to visit. This is really key.
Right. So you actually moved to France.
So actually I've been in France for about 15 years now. So I moved not for this particular role in OXB, but several roles ago, I would say, and I made France my home. I'm a French citizen now. So, but I think that this concept of, if you really want to progress within the industry, I do believe that you have to be flexible to location. You have to follow the opportunities where they are. If something pops up and you think, well, really, that's a great move for me and I'm going to learn a lot, then it's great if you have the ability, as I had, to move around. So yeah, I mean, I've lived in a number of different countries, but the current one is France. OXB has 2 sites in France, one in Strasbourg and one in Lyon. So that's really also an opportunity. And the fact that I speak French also really helps. Going back to the connection with people, it's really important when I'm visiting the French sites that I'm able to speak in their language, and we can have town halls and big meetings all together. That really helps, because while obviously a lot of the more senior leaders, are speaking very good English, of course, but to really touch our operators, for example, it really helps if you speak the language. So in France, I can do that, not in every country, obviously, but yeah. And then our other sites, are in the US, so that's also easy for me to go and visit them. And we have a site in just outside Boston and another one in North Carolina in Raleigh. So and then for the UK, obviously I spent some time in my life in the UK, so it's interesting for me to be back working in the UK a bit, because it's quite a long time that I didn't work in the UK. So I'm enjoying that reconnection back with the industry in the UK as well.
Yeah. So you're doing a lot of traveling right now as well, visiting all the sites.
Yes, I mean, I'm traveling most weeks actually, but again, I think that really speaks to my commitment to the people, because to be in sites, to be connecting with people, to be really understanding their challenges and concretely understanding, how to work with the teams and so on. There's nothing that replaces actually physically being there. And especially, in the beginning, I'm in this job for not so long. So it's very important in the early days to make those connections, and to build trust and rapport is very important.
Yeah, agree with you. So I also find it very interesting and very important what you said about learning from different cultures and bringing good ideas from company to company. So we see it quite a lot. Also, one of the reasons doing this podcast and the webinars that we are doing, we're bringing experts from different countries, cultures, because you see that although the GMP regulations might seem same on paper, but people do it differently, and we can always learn from different aspects of how people are doing things, which we might think that we know best, but then you encounter other ways which are better, more efficient, more interesting. But then there comes the question how to implement it. So you mentioned that when you worked throughout your career in different companies, different areas, you managed to take information, take technology, and implement it in another industry, in a different type of product. So, Melanie, you talked about bringing innovation or things and best practices from industry to industry. You talked about learning things in one company and then establishing it into another to improve efficiency or best practices. So it sounds, of course, great, but then we sometimes have the issue with resistance to change. And we all know it. There are people who work in companies for many years, 20, 30 years, even 10 years. It's enough to for people to say, okay, we have been always doing it like this. We don't want to change. But sometimes change is important because regulation change, technology changes, the way we do things change to improve the efficiency and to be more compliant. So we also, you talked about rapport, between rapport and talking to the people. So what are your techniques to overcome resistance and make people want the change?
So I think that the most important thing in any change, I mean, people don't like change. This is for sure. But in any change, the key thing is to communicate well. It's very important that in every step of any change that we're bringing, that we're really making sure that the teams are understanding the need for the change, are understanding, what's the the change that needs to happen and how that will impact them, and just that communication. I often find something that really helps, and something else I'm also very interested in, is the implementation of lean and continuous improvement and operational excellence within quality. Sometimes I think if we have a change to make, this is also a vehicle by which we can make those changes. And maybe one example of that is, if you're trying to look at a process and improve the process, do a Kaizen, make sure that everybody who's involved in that process at least is represented in that Kaizen, so that there can be an understanding of where the challenges are, what needs to change, and really using that so that people also feel involved in the change. That's also something that I found very helpful. So that connection really between how we look at change and how we implement change. And then above all of that, is the communication piece.
Right. I agree with you on that. So communication is key, and partnership at the end of the day.
Yes.
Showing the people that you want the best for them, for the process. It's not to make work, more complicated, but rather the other way around. And usually it works out quite well, right? And when you got to OXB, is there something that surprised you in a way that you say, oh, that's really interesting, that's very cool, that's a very, very, very interesting way of doing things?
Well, apart from the product itself, which, as I already mentioned, is just an incredible technology bringing innovation to patients, which is just incredible. The types of diseases that we're working on, it's really life changing for our clients to be able to bring those products and those treatments to our customers, to the patients, excuse me. I think that one thing that was really incredibly well done was how I was onboarded. I mean, I've worked in a number of different companies. I think the onboarding at OXB and the passion that the people have that work there for the product that we make is something really exceptional. The people that work in OXB are completely immersed in what that means, and we talk a lot about patients. We talk a lot about having the connection with, bringing patients in to talk to the teams, to share their experience and how their life has changed with these products is something that I've seen that in some extent, I would say, but this is really something I would say quite exceptional at OXB, and it really was something that really struck me when I joined, even in that very first week. I think the other thing is that we say that it's a quality and innovation led CDMO, and this is really where people are. I would say it's really the truth, and people are really living this reality. Quality is absolutely at the forefront of everything that we do, as well with innovation. So yes, I mean, we're making innovations, we're improving the way that we do things through innovation, but underlying all of that is this commitment to quality, which is, if you talk to our CEO throughout all the business, you have this sense of this commitment to quality. At the end of the day, these are products that, we hope that we never have a family member who has to have these products. But in the end, that's the reality. And people are very conscious of that and really take a lot of care over the quality of what we do. So that's really something really wonderful as the leader of quality, that already we have this baseline, I would say, of understanding of what it means to really have great quality. So that's something that really impressed on me in even the first days that I joined, but that continues to be something that's really at the forefront of every conversation I have. Every decision that has to be made, it really is really at the forefront of all of that.
And as you mentioned, OXB is a CDMO, so you work with partners and clients that require your techniques, your viral vectors, and your technology to continue developing and producing their own products through cell therapy and probably proteins that they extract from cells, right? So there are probably different uses for right now for those technologies, as we know. And working with different clients with different expectations and different needs and wants. So how do you balance the quality between the clients? So do you have like clients that have very much stricter requirements and that have lower? How do you balance all that to provide this kind of service?
Well, I think as a business, we really are very client centric. So understanding, because we have clients who are in very early stage and could be just a startup, and then we have clients who are very established, multinationals. So there's a big difference in the kinds of our clients. It's very important that we are client centric. We are, and we really are well known for being client centric. From a quality perspective, yes, always in any CDMO, and it's not the first CDMO that I've worked in. You always have this difference in requests and difference in levels of the people that you're interacting with. I would say that what's important is that we have a very solid quality management system. We're inspected. Our own quality management system is inspected. We have to be able to stand behind what we do. And we have to take care of issues in the right way. It's our reputation on the line for those types of interactions. So very important for us that we're involving the client. We communicate a lot with the client, very, very detailed communications, and really, we're trying to take care of business for them, doing what we're the expert at. And yes, to keep them happy. And I think, and I mentioned it before, we have a network of 9 sites, and in the sites, what we want to be sure is that, we have what we call one OXB. So the quality of input that you get from a site in the US, for example, should be the same as from the UK. So we're very keen that we work in that way, so that, we have clients that have projects in multiple different sites. And so it's important that they can trust the level of quality at OXB, no matter which site they're working with.
So would you say that it makes your quality system more complicated, because on one side you need to keep it very highly maintained, you need to document everything. On the other hand, it should be available for client audits or client information, and not all the information you're probably willing to share or allowed to share with the client. So does it complicate the quality systems and how you build it? So from one side you have the transparency, but from the other the efficiency, or also what you still need to keep private and
So I think we are a very transparent company, and we don't that's the only way that you can operate in order to have the trust of your clients. It's important that you have a quality system, and that you maintain that for yourself. This is my personal opinion. We have to have a quality system that we as a company can stand behind in inspection and in health authority inspections, and also in client audits. So we do things the OXB way, I would say. But obviously we're always open to input from our different clients. So yeah, I'm not sure that it complicates matters. I think it doesn't complicate things, because anyway we have our own manufacturing licenses, so we have to do things right all the time, every time. I would say that different clients have different expectations in terms of the level of detail that they would like, and that's absolutely normal, and we can adapt to that. And I would say also that what's important is that we cannot be working in other people's quality systems. Many years ago, I worked for another CDMO, and we had some clients who wanted to implement, for example, their deviation procedure and have us work in that. So in those types of examples, you just can't do that. You have to be very clear that you have your own quality system which is inspectable, and that you have to work in that system also for a compliance perspective, because if you have your teams working in different systems and using different approaches, in the end you can have an impact on compliance. So for me, it's better, we have our own system, we work within our own system, but obviously we listen to our clients. The only thing I would say where, in any CDMO where you're not divulging certain things is if it's connected with another client. So we're very careful about that. We're very discreet. We're happy to provide whatever information is required, but we can't, provide information from one client to another client. This is obvious. We have to keep a high level of discretion and separation there.
Right, that makes sense. And being a CDMO, you probably encounter and have to allow much more audits than pharmaceutical company that sells directly to the to the pharmacies, right? Because you have clients that come to audit you, you have regulators that come to audit you, so you probably don't have 1 month or probably a couple of weeks without an audit, right? So how do you handle all this in the best way?
So, I'm passionate about us being audit ready at all times. The concept, in whatever part of the business you work in, that, you need to prepare for an audit, that you need to do something specific, to be ready, is a real misnomer. We should be inspectable and ready at all times. And, in my experience in many of the different countries that I've been responsible for in the past, you can have unannounced inspections, where the inspectors knock on the door, and typically they want to go into production before they even have an opening meeting. So this concept of being ready is very important. I would say the other part of that then is, how do you manage audits? So, everyone has their own opinions on this, but for me, it's important that, very quickly we can go and we can create the back room. We know who our SMEs are, who our subject matter experts are, that we have them listed, that each of those has a backup. And so they're ready to go if we have an unexpected visit or what have you, or an audit. So, that should all be set up and it should be kept up to date. One thing that I've noticed in my time in the industry is that the days of, printing out, hundreds of sheets of paper and putting them into folders and having a runner literally running between the back room and the front room, those days are gone. The expectation now of both our clients, but also the regulatory authorities, is that, we have a way to do that in an electronic format. So that's also something that, the teams need to know, and they need to know how to do that and how to provide the documentation that's requested as quickly as possible. That's been, I think, quite a game changer in how you manage inspections and audits. But yeah, it's the bread and butter of CDMO is to really receive clients and meetings and audits and technical visits and so on. So it's part of the business, and it also gives an opportunity. Every audit that you have is an opportunity to improve. So every inspection you have, every observation you have is a way to to have an improvement in the way you're operating. So I never see audits or inspections as a sort of necessary evil. I think it's not that. I think we have to look at it as a way to improve and to always grow in our professionalism. So yeah, but we have a lot of client audits. And that's normal. And we have a lot of countries where our products are being used, and so that also means we have a lot of regulatory inspections as well.
Right. Now, so I agree with you on the being always inspection ready and not always prepare. So I think as a CDMO, you must always be audit ready, sometimes more than a pharmaceutical, regular pharmaceutical company that usually have less regulatory audits. So sometimes they neglect it a bit, and I've seen this as well, that you are getting comfortable, and then before an audit and inspection you probably realize, oh, you need to hustle, you need to invest weeks to get your affairs in order, although it shouldn't be like this, right? It should be always work on with the highest standards and so on. And also the point of each inspection is an opportunity to grow. So I have been doing audits myself at some point, and I've encountered also auditees that were happy to receive the inspection, and they were happy to see an observation that they never got before. But I also had people that were fighting about every minor observation and just defending, their quality management system, like through sweat and blood, which I find it sometimes, it's honorable that you love your company so much, but I feel that sometimes it harms you from, improvement, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you always have to be open to observations. You have to always. I mean, if you genuinely feel that the observation is unfair or unfounded, then of course you should react to that and discuss that. Typically, when I was doing audits, I always made sure that I quoted the part of the GMP which the observation related to, which can help a lot. But yes, you do have some people who push back a lot. I think we have to make the constructive argument if we believe that the observation is unfounded and give evidences. But it depends on the regulatory authority as to how well that's received. I know that some authorities are very open to that discussion, and as long as it's respectful and not too much, and even sometimes can remove observations on the back of that. But then others, will say, well, I hear what you're saying, but I still have my opinion, and it's this, and so that's okay as well. So, but yeah, we don't push back. I think we just have to make the constructive argument, and then there's a certain moment when we need to recognize that something has been noted. And also, I think the other point about inspections and audits is the holistic view. Often people just react to what the observation is and fix that point, but the point of any inspection or any audit indeed is actually to look holistically at what the issue could be. So yeah, if you're not just looking at one deviation, you need to check in all your deviations. You're not just looking at one piece of equipment, you need to check all those kinds of pieces of equipment. So really looking across the board. And then the other part about being in a global company is that that's sort of also free advice, right? Because you may have challenges, or you may have an observation in one site. It's really important that you're also checking, well, do we have that observation in other sites as well? And if we do, let's fix that before we're inspected, let's say, on that. So that's also, I really do think it's sort of an opportunity to connect all of the different sites in the network to make sure that what's being picked up in one site is reacted to in all sites.
Right. So that makes sense, right? So, and this is where also your responsibility comes in as a global quality SVP, is that you really need to have the oversight over everything that is happening, but you also have to filter the right information, right? So how do you prioritize the information that you need to look at personally, and what you delegate? Do you have like a system for it? How do you feel? What is the most critical for you?
Yeah, so it's a very, very good question, and it's not very easy to answer, I would say. My personal approach is that if we have an issue in any site, my expectation is that my team, who I'm very connected with, are picking up the phone immediately. within an hour, within 2 hours, and telling me this information. So that escalation very quickly to me is extremely important. In terms of prioritization, what we need to be sure about is really the first thing is impact always on our patients. If there's an impact on patients, then that's obviously very important to react very quickly. For other aspects, for me, the important thing is to be connected with my team, and really they understand then very clearly what are the things that require immediate escalation, which will be something that they know that I would want to be involved in. Always questioning, does it have to be now that it happens? Does it have to happen at all? And if it does, do I need to do it, or can someone else do it? But my personal approach is a bit twofold in terms of how I lead. It's very important to be able to discuss with the board. I'm part of our executive leadership team, and to be able to have the discussions there at the right level around the right things, to connect what we do as a quality team and to show how that adds value, in the end of the day financially. That's very important. But my personal approach is also very important to, in a certain moment, you have to roll your sleeves up and really concretely help the teams with your experience and navigate sometimes challenging situations. So I always have this sort of twofold approach where you need to be able to do both of those things. And for me and my style of leadership, that's what I do. I make sure that I'm always available, can be contacted, and people know if they ask for my help that I will help, but also to bring the right messages to the leadership team and to the board.
Right. And being in your position where you're at a cross between the quality and the manufacturing and the operation. On the other hand, you have the leadership board, and there are the budgets, and then you have to balance quality versus the budget that you get. So what is your perspective, your personal perspective on this, for your journey from, let's say, from R&D, then you get up the ranks. Now suddenly you need to face budget talks, and what is your advice on getting what you need to keep the quality high from the board, and how to communicate your message when you need it?
So, one thing that's very important for quality professionals and wherever you are in your career is to make sure that you can speak the language of the executive leadership team and the board. I learned this many years ago. If you go and you just talk about, deviations and change controls, there could be a level of interest there, but for sure, connecting, as I said before, the value of quality and what it is that we do, and we're not just a cost, we're contributing. How are we contributing to the financial targets of the company? How are we setting our KPIs and our key performance indicators and the things that we're tracking every month? How does that connect with what it is that we're doing and what it is that we're tracking really at the highest level? So how is quality contributing to the success of the company? So it's very important that you learn the language, that you know how to connect that, and to make it simple for the board and so on to understand what it is that we're doing, which means that we that we have this great contribution. So learn the language of boards early. I think it's quite challenging for quality people, because typically in our studies, whether you're a pharmacist or a chemist or an engineer, it's not really something that's ever taught. So it means that you have to, go out and you have to concretely find this information. What I've done in the past is, making a friend of the CFO and asking for, for some advice on that and for some information. And also, to be transparent, if there's something that's being talked about and you don't understand, there's no shame in putting your hand up and saying, can somebody just explain that for me, please? So that's maybe one part. The other part of your question was in relation to, how do you sort of secure the budget? I think what's important is transparency. So, if we have things that we need to fix, that shouldn't be something that just I know about or just a site knows about. That's absolutely something that needs to be shared, needs to be escalated. And then from a headcount perspective also, it's important that we have the right people doing the jobs, and it's important that we have the right number. But if you're in a company, and I've been in companies that are really growing, and OXP is one of them, and so if you double the number of batches going out the door in a year, you can't double the number of people. So then you have to go back to what I was mentioning before, and okay, how can we look at our processes? How can we make them more efficient? How can we make them more effective? Generally, if we make things more efficient, we actually make them more compliant as well. So it's a win-win. If it's easier for people to follow the SOPs, they're less likely to make mistakes. So I think if you've done that and you're versed in operational excellence and you really are driving that within the quality organization, and then you have a genuine need, then that's really a very good argument to go to the leadership team and to the board and explain, well, these are the things that we've done, but we still need this, and then also, in QC labs and so on, making sure that we understand what our capacity is, we understand what the utilization of the equipment is. So all of those things, which, is a bit the language that leadership understand. If you can demonstrate that you're doing that, then I find that often works well, and you can lead people along a path of explanation till they come to the same solution, the same comprehension, let's say, as you have, and the same results. So yeah.
Right. Thank you for giving a great overview about how to look at it, how to communicate, and what you need to learn. So it's a good point, right? So if you're communicating with decision makers and CFOs that don't understand the deviations, they don't understand the impact, so you need to master the art of presentation, or the art of communication in a way that you need to translate what you see from your technical world to what they need basically to hear. And I guess it's something that takes practice, and you said you need to be lucky to have the right friends, maybe to take advice from, to help you communicate with these sort of people as well, right? And Melanie, if you could give an advice to people who would like also to grow in their career and someday also to be in a position where you are at, what would you say would be the key things they need to think about, or which paths they need to take in order to be able to achieve that? Maybe you could think about something that you would say, I hoped I knew this 10 years ago.
Yeah, so I guess a few things. One is that I grew up in a family of very strong women, and my grandmother used to say, "If you don't know where you want to go, how do you know how you're going to get there?" So I think that I had ambition for a long time, I would say, to work at a senior level, and increasingly I did that as the different jobs, I would say, changed. I did make those step ups. I would say another thing is that and it's not me that said this the first time, but if somebody gives you an opportunity, take that opportunity. You may not know 100% of what you need to know in order to do that, but if somebody has offered you that position, it's because they believe that you have the qualities that to bring to that position. And so take it and run with it, and learn in the process of doing so. The other thing is be open to geographies. I think I said that before, that I moved to different countries to take up different positions, and that also gave me a unique understanding of how other countries work, and I love different cultures. So that for me, it's a really easy thing. But to be open to do that is important. The other thing is also to believe in yourself. I think as women tend to have what did they call it, imposter complex. Sometimes don't think that they should speak up. So women, if we were talking about women in this particular instance, I think make sure that you're speaking up, make sure your hands up. If you're in a meeting and you don't have something to say, then you shouldn't be in the meeting. So make sure that you're making your points. It applies to everybody. Your opinion is valued. You wouldn't be in that meeting if it wasn't. And apply for things. Make it known that you want to progress. Make it known that you want to move up, or you want to have more responsibility. Other things that I did was, for example, if there was a project coming along, and offering to take on that project as well as the day-to-day job, and that's really perceived very well by leadership. It's really shows an implication. But I think above all, I would say, you have to work hard. I've worked very hard all my life. Whichever company I work for, I'm really passionate about working. I'm moved to OXP, and I'm completely inspired by our products and our people, and our ability to get things from phase one all the way through to commercial. Not many people and not many CDMOs in the cell and gene therapy space have really that concrete experience. So to be inspired by the teams is also important. But work hard and speak up and say what you want and say when you want things, and really aspire. If you really would like to be in a senior leadership position, know that that's your target, and try and navigate your path to that point. And I think these days, with younger people just starting out, they often want to move every 2 months into a different role. I think that's also something it's important to really learn that aspect, but then be open to moving to learn a new aspect. As I say, for me, I've been in the industry for almost 30 years, and it really is lifelong learning. I'm learning every day something new, and for me that makes it exciting. It makes my work interesting. And I think I'm very lucky that I wake up every morning, and I have done all of my career, inspired by, and not knowing necessarily what's going to happen in the day, but knowing that it's going to be something very interesting, and that's going to be very exciting in most cases. And literally every day I wake up, I have this feeling of excitement, to go and to do my job. So I think I've been very lucky.
That's very inspiring indeed, Melanie. So I'm very glad to hear that after so many years in the business, you're still super excited about the jobs. It means that you found the right place to be. So that's amazing. I think that many people would be lucky to know that they're excited and happy to wake up every day and still feel this excitement, because after some time you get accustomed, bored maybe. But this is a good point, that if it happens, you need to sit back and think, maybe it's time for me to move on, do something else, go into a higher role, because maybe you're not challenged enough, right? If you're not excited enough to wake up and start the job, right? So I guess this is one of the things.
It's important though, right? We have to be inspired by what we do. We have to be inspired by the company we work with, the people. I mean, people for me are very inspiring. I've worked with some incredible people. As I said, joining OXB was one of the first things that really I would say not surprised me, but it stands out so much that as a company that's been running for 30 years, I mean, we have a lot of people we even have people who were originally developing the techniques of viral vector, so coming from the University of Oxford. So, when you talk to them, their commitment is lifelong to this product, it's really inspiring. So very exciting. And I think always be curious. I'm very curious as part of my nature. So that also helps.
Wonderful. So, Melanie, it was a wonderful conversation. So, before we finalize this podcast, is there anything that I didn't ask you, and you would like to add because you feel it's something that you were thinking about and didn't have a chance to share it?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think just, for people just coming up I would say coming up through their career, just as I said, I think that's, anybody can sit in my seat and do what I do. If they want to, it's, everything is achievable with hard work, and with curiosity and with interest. So, anybody can do it. And yeah, as I say, every day I wake up and it's a new day, and I'm excited with what I do and excited to work with OXP. So yeah, anyone can do it. You just have to know that you want to.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Melanie. So it was so much fun having this conversation with you, so enlightening, and I'm very glad we had the chance to do this conversation. And on this note, again, thank you, and wish you best of luck on your road at OXP, and hope that you continue wake up excited for many more years in this job.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jan, for giving me the opportunity also to talk to you today. It's been a real privilege, so thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Qualitalks podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star review. If you want to learn more about GMP, please visit us at www.qualistery.com. Stay compliant and see you at the next one.